Today marks the first time in 26 days that the public has seen the First Lady. Melania has not made any public appearances since she was hospitalized last month for a benign kidney condition. As speculation swirled around her absence, the president tweeted this morning, quote, "The fake news media has been so unfair and vicious to my wife and our great First Lady Melania. During her recovery from surgery, they reported everything from near death to facelift to left the White House and me." Ooh, imagine that. For New York or Virginia, to abuse. All fake. She's doing really well. 4 reporters spotted Melania in the White House last week walking merrily along to a meeting. They never reported the sighting because it would hurt the sick narrative that she was living in a different part of the world, was really ill, or whatever. Fake news is really bad. To which my colleague Joe Scarborough responded, quote, "I agree that it would be vicious and unfair to lie about a loved one having a facelift for the purpose of causing pain and embarrassment. Mr. President, can you imagine anybody would be so cruel as to do such a thing?" Joe, of course, referring to the president's attack on Mika Brzezinski nearly a year ago. Everybody's still here. Eddie, you and I are lucky enough to be part of the Morning Joe family. I remember that day. The president sent out a tweet. He wrote, "I heard poorly rated Morning Joe speaks badly of me," as if he doesn't watch. He watches every day like a slave. "Don't watch anymore. Then how come low IQ crazy Mika along with Psycho Joe came to Mar-a-Lago 3 nights in a row around New Year's Eve and insisted on joining me? She was bleeding badly from a facelift. I said no." So the president dishing out insults, and then I don't really know a lot of mainstream outlets that put together that list he assembled in his Twitter. We certainly on this program didn't cover a single theory for her absence from the public arena, but now we are because the president tweeted it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, he cries harm and injury when it comes to him because he's a narcissist. He's not really concerned about the harm and injury he dishes out. So let's just be clear about that. And our own Hallie Jackson has reported on the First Lady and that she was hunkered down with her staff in her office thinking about planning ahead. That I don't recall mainstream media kind of reflecting on some of the concerns that he lays out in his tweet. I think this, again, is just Donald Trump ginning up his base, trying to gin up outrage. Look at these folks attacking the First Lady, using that, again, as fodder to kind of feed to his base. This is just a part of this. How can you describe it, Nicole? It's almost as if painting themselves as victims allows them to do what they do. And so they can fall back on being victims of something as cover, as they flout every norm, as they undermine every institution and try to pursue their own narcissistic ends, or his own narcissistic ends.
I agree with that, and that to me is the plausible explanation for all the stuff he does as it pertains to government. But I do not accept that as an explanation for your wife's illness. I mean, the fact that nothing is sacred, that even your wife being sick and then reappearing is an excuse to get on Twitter and unload a screed of wackadoo stuff.
Okay, for the 500th time, I think I need to say...
You're going to bring a pan to hit me over the head with?
There is something deeply wrong with this man. Because there's no strategy here. Who tweets something like that about your wife? Look, I think the Melania is a beautiful and classy First Lady. I think she deserves privacy. And yet the president...
we gave it to her.
And then the President of the United States does 2 things. One, he lies about the coverage. I mean, that is just a flat-out lie about those things. But then he himself floats out these wild, bizarre conspiracy theories. Yes, in order to create some sort of a victimization. But who does that sort of thing? And there are so many rational, reasonable, classy ways of making the point that she's okay, that he loves her, that he supports her, etc. And yet he doesn't do that. He's also completely unself-aware to the point where, he's talking about how dare anyone speculate that she have a facelift, which, by the way, why would you say that? Having done that, to other people. And so, I think if you try to come up with some rational political justification for that, it just doesn't really rise to the moment.
Eddie, I'm going to put you on the spot because you can handle it. There is a pattern, though, of him saying things about the women in his life. I'm thinking of all the things he said about his daughter, Ivanka, on programs like Howard Stern. I'm thinking about things he said about a very young infant, Tiffany Trump, in other interviews. I mean, he has said things about the women in his life that are at best lewd, at worst really disturbing.
Well, look, I mean, I don't want to fall into the trap of name calling, but, you know, and I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but he seems to me to be a narcissist. And he seems only to be concerned about himself. And then that concern, that kind of narcissism, kind of merges or converges with other sorts of character flaws. One is that he has a very complicated and problematic relationship with women, whether it be women he's declared he loves or women that are the object of his crude desires. It's not the case that Donald Trump will accord people outside of himself dignity and standing. Everyone, including the people he loves, seems to be, for him at least, in a relationship of transaction. That he's engaged in something with, I'm getting something from you, right, for myself. And to the extent to which his relationships are transactional, even the people he loves will fall victim to what that means. And so I don't want to call him a misogynist, although there's some elements there.
I will.
But there's something that follows from his narcissism that's deeply problematic.
Well, I will. I mean, he is a narcissist and he's a misogynist, and I think that's a matter of public record. But I think that Eddie is absolutely right here, is that in everyone's world, in Trump's world, everyone is to be used. Everyone is to be exploited. Whatever, you know, in order to make that person a victim, in order to use that person as a cudgel. And this is why, you know, I do have some sympathy for look, Melania made her own choices, but I have some sympathy about, you know, what it must be like to realize what she got herself into, and she got another dose of it this morning.